Okay, yes, ligamentous tissues.
Yeah, so when you're loading your tissues in a linear fashion, you're getting a certain amount of signaling to those tissues, right?
Yep.
And the focus is usually muscular. But the fact is that there are so many tissues collaborating to support your loads that you're forming these lines of stress, right? Specific lines of stress in a linear fashion. When you start to bring, let's make this arm an example. When you start to bring this arm off the midline, all of a sudden your tissues are reacting a little bit differently. If I now load that tissue off the midline, all of a sudden the lines of stress become a little different, right?
Yep.
So if I did load this particular tissue in this direction, one would think, yeah, this is a rear delt exercise if you're thinking gym terms. But if you're looking fascially, all of the tissues that go across my back into my right hip are now being innervated, right? So when I do load off the midline, and we always start in very small increments, I start to innervate not just the motion of the deadlift, which this is your deadlift, right? Let's say this is your deadlift, singular or linear fashion, right?
Yep.
If I start to load my deadlift off the midline, I'm now incorporating all the tissues that would happen when I'm moving a little bit more naturally, to say the least.
Yeah, okay.
Right? And the further off the midline I go, the more I challenge those tissues and form more robust lines of stress. So when I do start to make movements in nature, whatever sport or activity you decide, your tissues are a lot more prepared for all of those motions, because when you're moving in nature or in sport, it's rare that you're going to have signaling that is directly linear.
Right, and I think it was in the FRC seminar, I'm pretty sure, Dewey was saying, if you film athletes, they never repeat the same movement exactly the same twice.
Exactly.
It's this whole range of,
Exactly.
you know.
Even more so, there was an experiment that's been done multiple times where they start to have sensors on your tissues, right? So even in a deadlift, in a regular deadlift, where someone would say, what muscles are active in here? Or what's the prime mover of these muscles, which is a common, or this action, which is a common question. They would say hamstrings, glutes, right? In some positions, some people would say quads, right? Your low back, right? Hypothetically speaking. But in reality, even with those motions that people say are dominantly hamstring or dominantly glute, there are so many different firing patterns, right? So where I do the same motion 40 times, every single time, the amount of muscular activity is going to be different in different areas. So the body is creating this variability even within this motion, right? So the idea of utilizing these tools in particular is to have a precise measurement or load, right? This is 4 kilograms.
Okay.
A precise load to work with off the midline, so you have a measurable kind of tool. Right?
Very cool.
And yeah, and what I like to utilize these for is especially when people who are not powerlifting, because powerlifting is very much so just linear, it's one action, it's 3 different exercises, right? And while this could be a valuable tool for powerlifters, I would say for anyone outside of powerlifting, this is more so what you should be utilizing. And again, this is just a representation of a load.
Right. So you could use like a sandbag.
You could use a sandbag, you could use a body bar, you could use a regular weight, so long as it's coming off of your midline specifically.
Yeah.
And you start to teach your body all of these different options, right? So Dewey Nielsen hit on a really good point where when an athlete moves, they're never doing the same motion twice, right? And someone who is playing baseball or basketball is going to say, well, I always do this, right? But your body always creates different muscular activity and tissue activity based on what you're doing.
Yeah.
So the stimulus that's making you do this or this is never exactly the same. Your body's never going to approach it exactly the same.
Right.
So the idea is to mimic those motions. Maybe you would do a drill if you were a basketball, tennis, or baseball player, where you're moving sideways, but you're moving with this load in a way that you're telling your tissues, I want you to be able to do this. And the more you move along those lines of stress, when you do go into your sport or activity, your body has all of these options that it's familiar with, and it's less likely to get injured because it's formed these robust structures.
It's interesting that you bring this up today, just because I think I've been telling you sort of as a side track to this, the FRC stuff. I've been taking some coursework from Lauren O'Hayan and the ladies at Gait Happens, and Lauren's, one of her favorite sort of tropes, if you will, is like, you know, there's nothing wrong with you, it's just that your brain knows one way to get to the deli, and we want to teach your brain that you have multiple options to get to the deli, and then your brain gets to choose whichever one is appropriate in a given set of circumstances.
Absolutely right.
So
yeah,
that's a nice little connection there.
So it's always good to warm up with cars. I mean, I would say that this should be the staple based on telling your joints to be prepared. But this is going to be an introduction to how we tell your tissues to be prepared, your more superficial tissues, right, than the deepest joint structures.
Yeah.
And we'll be talking to the joint structures as well. So they'll get some options there as well. And in particular positions, you might feel like, this feels this, or this feels that, and that's okay. Just noticing and naming what you're feeling, and if at any time there's pain, let me know ASAP.
Yeah, okay. So just yesterday I was out weed whacking, and the way that it's set up is you hold the controls and you kind of hold the stem, right? Mm-hmm. I'm sure you've used a weed whacker. And there's this, this kind of motion. And when I got done, the battery pooped out, so I wasn't out there a super long time. But I'd been doing a bunch of gardening and lifting pots and moving them and stuff. And my SI was a little cranky again, but I did a bunch more foot restoration work in the evening and some beam work, practicing walking on the beam, turning and stuff like that. And it's pretty much gone today. So, yeah.
Good. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to introduce you to the linear motion. And this is going to feel super duper light because this Viper is only 4 kilograms. But we are going to start to progressively load the tissues, only we're going to load it with a tilt. So it's going to be slightly different than lifting. Your feet are going to be about 4 to 6 inches away from the Viper. And your feet are going to be placed about hip width apart.
Okay.
Next thing we're going to do is try and reach with the tailbone. So I want a nice tall spine when I reach, thinking from the tailbone through the top of the head. And when I do reach, I want to hinge as properly as I can. And then I'm going to reach the Viper away simultaneously. When I do reach, I want to reach with intent.
Okay.
So I'm actually trying to reach as far away from my tailbone as I possibly can.
Okay.
And I want you to feel like the action is controlled by a rubber band effect. So when you do feel the end, I want you to immediately come back to a standing position with both the hip hinge and your arms coming back to you. So it looks like so.
Okay.
So I'm really feeling the end of my tailbone reach and the end of my path of my hands. About 4 to 6 inches away. Awesome. Nice. Go for about 45 seconds here. Good. Make sure you come up tall every single time. Seconds. 10 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Good. Now we're going to give you the feeling of a slightly heavier load. This is going to be 10 kilograms. And again, we're just tilting it, but I want you to feel how much more control is necessary in all of those tissues. And instead of placing the hands flat on top, we're just going to hook them through. Yeah. Same deal here. 45 seconds straight.
Okay.
next 30 seconds. When you do stand it up, try and stand up the Viper completely straight, and try and bring your shoulders away from the Viper as you come back. Good, more deadlift pattern, less squat. There we go. 15 seconds. Three, two, one. Good. Now that we've prepped the tissues in this kind of linear fashion, we're going to try another one in non-linear fashion. So with this one, I'm going to take a slightly staggered stance. All of my weight's going to be on the forward foot. My back foot is just here so that I can balance, right? So most of my weight, I would say it's at least 80-20.
Okay.
And when I do hinge, I want to hinge in the very same way that I would with that deadlift. The only thing is, again, we've got an 80-20 position. This hand is going to reach as far away from the tailbone as I can. My opposite hand is going to do a counter action. And then I come right back up. And again, when you do stand up, this is going to be just like it was at the start position, and your shoulders want to come away from the Viper.
Okay. Okay. Let's see, what was my question? So here, so
Slightly staggered. Yep, a little bit closer. Right there, perfect.
Okay.
All of the weight's on the forward foot, about 80-20 at least.
okay, and this one just doesn't touch.
Exactly.
Okay, so like this.
Yep.
Okay.
Good. Less squat, more deadlift. Fifteen seconds. Three, two, one, switching feet. So now this is still a linear pattern, but we're going to take it into the non-linear right after this position. But as you can feel, now the line of stress is not straight up your erectors, it's kind of diagonal.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Okay.
Fifteen seconds. Four, three, two, one. Good. Here's how we're going to make it off the midline now. So, very same position of my staggered stance. My hand is going to be pushing the Viper directly laterally as I hinge.
That way.
Yep. And remember, it's less squat and a little more depth.
So
Let's get the single handed forward. That's going to make it nice and easy for you.
okay, so just
Same stagger.
okay, and I'm going this way.
Yup.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Good. Get a little closer to the Viper and a little less stagger. Yep. Fifteen seconds. Five, four, three, two, one. Switching sides.
I made it wander away. It's a little trickier.
15 seconds. Three, two, one. Good. We're going to do another set of those. And this time what we're going to do is we're going to sink into position first, because sometimes when we're going fast, the body starts to change its position and its pattern a little bit.
Yep.
So when I do hinge, remember I don't want squat, I want a little more deadlift.
Yeah.
And then as I go through, I'm going to land this first and then reach as far as I can. Once I reach the end, bring it back and stand up top.
Okay.
30 seconds per side.
So,
Okay. Sinking into that deadliftish position first and then pushing away. Once you're as far as you can get, we come right back up like a rubber band. Good. A little more bend in the forward ankle is going to take the weight off the back. Seconds. Switching sides.
somehow keep pushing it further away from me.
Yeah, when you get used to how the Viper kind of acts, you'll see that your hand placement will change how it kind of stays.
Okay.
15 seconds. Four, three, two, one. Good. Nice. Next up, we're going to go into a half kneel position. What I'm trying to do here is keep my composure as I try to stay nice and upright, and I'm going to reach as far off my midline as I can. Abs stay nice and tight, and then I bring it back just one direction here, and I bring it back. As you can see, I'm on my left knee and I'm shifting to my right.
Okay. So, like that.
Double handles? Yes. And we're going to be chest high, shifting it like a typewriter.
So that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm rotating, right? Or
No
not
rotation.
Just that?
Yep, and try to keep that right arm clavicle height. So your fists are going to be pointed up toward the ceiling. Yeah. Abs stay tight. Fifteen seconds. Switching knees and switching the shift direction. Ten seconds. 3, 2, 1. Good. Nice job. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start to introduce you to other pieces, right? Because even though this is a linear position and the motion's going off the midline, the body moves in 3 dimensions, right? So the idea is to try to introduce your body to these particular off the midline loads while also moving in 3D, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start you off with a little bit of a matrix here, and it's going to be a tilting matrix.
Okay.
So I'm going to stand in my staggered stance. I'm going to reach it forward, bring it back, reach it to the side, bring it back, reach it forward, bring it back, reach it to the side, and bring it back. And after we do that for 30 seconds per side, we'll go into a 3D matrix at feet.
Okay.
Single handle is always going to be forward. Yep. Combining those two motions of the forward reach and the lateral reach.
So.
Seconds. Three, two, one, switching side. Seconds. Good. So keep in mind also that when we go into this 3D matrix, a lot of these positions are ready positions, right? So whereas I can go really deep into a depth of what feels like a Cossack position, right, or a lateral lunge, I'm really going to try to be in a more of an action position. So in order for me to take action from here, I would probably have to come up to right about here, right? Mm-hmm. And the reason why I say that is we're going to be switching from one position to the next. So we really want to make the most efficient action position, especially since we're going to be bearing load, even though that's tilted, right? So when I do go into my forward lunge, it won't be for depth, it'll be for action. So at the base of my action position to where I can press back.
Okay.
And if same
so
thing
not
with the lateral.
very deep.
Yeah. So we're not going for a full range of motion, so to speak.
Okay.
We're going for action positions that we can quickly change and create efficiency in those action positions.
Okay.
So again, my 3D matrix, I'll get in front of the camera. For my lunging would be one here, one here, one here, one here, right? And this is still, I would say, maybe 40% of what a full 3D matrix would be.
Right.
Especially since like falling positions will incorporate a lot of different stuff, right? So to be more specific would be me saying there's a whole clock to pay attention to.
Sure.
Right? But here we're going to be paying attention to 4 points of that clock, which is 12, 3, 6, and 9.
Okay.
Yeah? So let's try this without the weight first. Without the weight first, we'll remember that one foot is stuck to the ground and the heel is allowed to pop.
Okay.
Yeah? So forward first.
And I'm still going for more deadlift.
No, so we're sinking into an action position. Wherever your body likes to be for that action position is fine. Yep. Nice long legs. Yeah, so from
I'm
here,
rotating.
From here, this is a drop step. Right? So very similar to a lateral lunge. The only thing is I'm taking more of a transverse plane.
Okay.
And then back to center, and then curtsy, and back to center, forward lunge. Good, lateral, drop step, and curtsy.
Okay, and we're done.
Okay. Good, so when you do curtsy, it's a good curtsy, but there's a lot of weight going to the outside foot. I want it more of an action curtsy. So most of the weight's gonna be here so that when I recover, I can actually, if I was here, I could bounce to that side if I wanted to.
Okay. Okay. Probably won't be pretty, but all right.
Now take your time.
So no weight.
No weight yet.
Okay. Okay, so.
Good. Shoulder curtsy. There we go. One more. Good. Switch feet.
I feel like I'm doing the same one
You're okay.
twice.
You're okay.
Okay.
One more. Excellent. So now, with the Viper, there's a lot of different benefit other than tissue robustness, right? There's frontal lobe activation because a lot of times we're utilizing these different patterns in a cross-lateral positioning,
Yeah.
right? So Dr. Carla Hannaford wrote a great book called Smart Moves, where she goes in depth as to how frontal lobe stimulation with movement actually helps people who have tough time testing. They actually did tests on kids where they did 20 minutes of cross-lateral patterning before testing with no extra studying, and they scored 20% higher in their testing just from those exercises.
Way.
Smart Moves, great book.
Wow, that's really interesting.
But this is one of the reasons why cross-lateral patterning became so strong in this particular thing, in this particular venue, because my mentor decided, you know what, we're going to try and market this towards kids as well, because it's useful in many different ways,
Yeah.
right? Not just for the body, but for the brain as well.
Yeah.
So I would say if you're feeling like you're having one of those days that you really need to be on the ball thinking, this is a great way to set it off, and 15 minutes will do it.
Couldn't come at a better time. I was like thinking to myself this morning, my menopause is like muddy the mind kind of, yeah, so this is,
Great addition.
yeah.
So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna add this tilting motion, right?
Okay.
I'm going forward first. I'm going out to the side.
So the weight goes with you.
Weight goes with me wherever I go. Now, keep in mind too that if when I go out to the side I spin this, it's gonna start to move away from me like a wheel. So I wanna think, this is where the brain comes into play a little bit. It might necessitate that I take a different hand patterning as I go,
Okay.
right? So this is where that coordination is gonna come into play. I step forward, I go to the side, and notice how my hand has changed position without actually rolling the Viper. I go into my drop step, and then I go into my curtsy.
Okay. Yeah.
Slow and steady to start.
Won't be as pretty as yours, but okay.
I've had lots of practice.
Okay, so.
So standing together first, you can be behind it a little bit, and as you step forward, we're reaching the Viper forward.
Okay.
So opposites, left foot will go forward. Nice. Good. One more. Good. Switch sides. That's okay.
Sweat.
That's okay.
See.
Good. So just a little trick also, when you go into your lateral lunge, when you're going here, because originally I showed you this arm,
Yeah.
but you're doing what your brain is telling you to do, which is a good idea. So take this hand and try and form this punching motion toward the floor with that lateral lunge. Yep, and then come right back up. When you go into your drop step, it's pretty much the same thing. Punching motion toward the floor. So your hand's gonna be on the other side of the cut. Yep. Exactly. One more. Good. Nice. Yeah, and there's a few things we're going to go over today. It's going to feel like my body's just not getting this, but this is what the introduction is all about, right?
Yeah.
And what we're going to do is we're going to give you a little bit of a different demand here.
Okay.
So during my lunge forward, my hand will be in the very same place. During this one,
Yeah.
punching here. During this one, here. And during my curtsy, right? So forward, lateral, drop step, and curtsy. And you'll see that even when you do get good at these, your brain will be like, what the hell was I just doing, right? And it's just about the brain needs to be just as warmed up as the body.
Right.
Yeah. We'll go for one more set of each of these on each side.
Okay. So same as what I was doing, just fix the grip a little bit.
Yep.
Okay. So.
Allow your hand to dance from one side to the next every time you stand it up as the opportunity to change the hand position.
Let's start here.
So right there's where it went wrong. So when you did go forward, you used your left foot. The same foot's gonna stay stuck. So I'll be going in this direction. Now you're gonna be moving your right foot.
Yeah.
Stay on that
Okay.
left
Okay.
foot forward.
All right. Left foot forward.
Yep.
So.
Left foot goes lateral now. And drop step. And curtsy. Excellent. Keep that going. Good. The shorter your step, the more control you'll have. Good. Nice long reaches. Give me two more. Excellent. Switching sides.
No. That way.
No?
That way.
There you go. Take your time. Good. Step shorter. Yeah. Step short, reach long. Two more. One more. Good. So if I was training you specifically for this and I was recording you, what I would do in this 3D pattern first is see which steps felt the most awkward, which steps felt the most inefficient, right? And sometimes in your drop step, this guy wants to stay bent. This is all information, right? So I would say try and get that same position with this long. And the reason being is that the more tissues we have on length, the more osmotic pressure we're gonna have throughout that entire line, right?
Yeah. One speak there.
Yes. Yep, and same thing when you go out laterally. So if I go into my lateral lunge and this guy wants to bend, that's information, right? I want straight line, and that's gonna bring all this line of stress here and across my back in through the arm that's reaching.
Okay. Again?
No, you're okay. So that was the 3D matrix introduction, right?
Okay. I like that. That's fun.
Cool. So now we're going to take it back to a slightly more linear pattern. We are going to incorporate that lateral lunge. And this is a lot of times what I utilize for restoration because this is a slower flow. And this is one that I really want you to try to just lose yourself in. Okay? We are trying to deadlift first. I'm going to bring my body really close as I tilt it. You can see my hands are really close to my body.
Yeah.
And this is where the dancer in you is going to shine because most people who are dancers remember all the steps. I'm going to reach into my deadlift pattern first. I come back up. When I come back up, I raise this leg, and this is a balance motion. And then I step back with this foot. And then I'm going to turn around, which is a spin, reach into this, what looks like a forward lunge pattern, but really it's a split squat. And then I'm going to switch hands. And then I'm going to reach again. And then I'm going to bring this right on back. You're going to get it. You are.
Okay.
It's a lot easier than it looks once you start getting into the flow.
Okay.
So this is loaded movement flowing.
Okay.
And this is actually one of the ways that I prefer to work out when I'm doing three-dimensional patterning.
Okay.
Because I can work out for an hour and it doesn't feel like an hour. It feels like I'm just lost in it. And it feels pretty amazing.
Again, synchronicity. This is like, I just, on my drive down here, I was like, I'm having a really hard time finding flow state these days. And like, I've been making a lot of moccasins and I can really get into flow state when I'm doing that.
Yeah.
But I've been having a hard time finding it other places, so.
So you're gonna start off light. Let's grab this 4K back.
Okay.
And we'll do it together.
Okay, so.
Let's get a little more room between us.
Yeah, okay, so.
Yep. So first I walk right into the end of this cylinder, and there's no space. I deadlift. Coming up tall, I balance and pass. I take this foot and step back, and then I spin. And reach. I switched hands. I switch hands again, and I lateral lunge with a punch reach. Bring it back up. Switch hands. I reach in the same way I just did. And then I'm going to bring it all the way over into my deadlift position. And there's plenty of pieces that I can add on to this, but I'm going to keep it nice and short for now.
Okay.
Deadlift. Let's do the opposite side. I raise one leg and pass. Step. Spin. Reach. Change hands position. Lateral lunge. Change back. Reach. Leg comes over. And deadlift. Switching sides. Step. Spin. Reach. Lateral lunge. Reach. Step over. Reset. Hinge. Pass. Spin. Reach. Lateral lunge. Reach. Step over. Switch. Pass. Spin.
Oh, hang on a sec, sorry.
Oh,
You
have yourself a
I
back.
no. I had a cut, had a Band-Aid on it, and I took the Band-Aid off earlier.
Okay, because this thing is not supposed to have any sharp edges.
No, it doesn't. I think I just, friction kind of
I would say your best bet is to clean it off. Take these guys right here, we'll apply some pressure to it.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
Some sticky tape.
Perfect.
We'll get those two guys together there.
Bloody tape. Perfect. Thank you.
No worries.
Sorry about that.
No.
I didn't bleed all over
No,
your
that's cool.
weight here, but
I mean,
Okay.
there's cleaning solution for everything.
right, right.
No worries.
Okay.
So we'll reset.
Yep, yep.
I'm walking right into the end of the cylinder. We hinge first. We'll raise the right leg in balance. Take that toe, place it back, and I spin and reach.
Okay, so I'm still way further apart with my legs than you are.
Yep, always taking a short step. That's going to give us a lot of action positioning. The longer I am, the more I have to change position before I can really get into action.
I
right?
see that. I don't
So
know why
I
I
got
keep
a little
going so
footprint.
far.
And sometimes also, I want you to practice bending your ankle more.
More doors.
Yep, because if I'm back here, it's going to change the production of force altogether, and I want my whole foot to feel that action. And then I come back, that lateral lunge, move to my second reach forward, and then I come right on back onto the horse. Hinge, opposite side, goes into balance, place and spin, and reach. Switch hands and lateral lunge. Switch hands, second reach. And step over and onto the horse. Good, let me see you try. I'll walk you through it.
Okay.
Hinge. Good. Balance, one leg comes up, pass the viper underneath. That foot plants the toe, that's very far back. When you do reach, think about doing this. Yup, now spin. Change hands and reach. Good, not so low.
But more dorsiflexion.
Yep.
Okay.
Lateral lunge, or lateral split, I should say, because your foot is already in a good position.
This?
Yep. And second reach forward.
And again, I'm too far apart.
That's okay. Your body's gonna learn where it needs to be. And then right over the horse. Hinge. Pass to the opposite leg.
Okay. There we go.
Spin. Switching hands, reach. Good. Switching hands, lateral lunge. Good. If you feel like you want to step out, there you go. And spin and reach. And back onto the horse. Hinge, pass to the opposite leg. Spin and reach. Switching hands, lateral lunge. Switching hands, spin, or rather, reach. And onto the horse. One more for each. Balance. Short step. Spin, reach. Oh, opposite. You're okay. These things don't break easy. Lateral lunge, switching hands. Good. Second reach. And back onto the horse. One more time on this side. Switch. You just did the same side twice, but that's okay. That's okay. Okay, yeah. Shorter step back. Yep, spin, reach. Good. Lateral lunge. One more reach. And back onto the horse. Switch sides. Lateral lunge. Nice. Nice second reach. And back onto the horse to finish.
You take a lot more steps than you do.
That's okay. And your feet are just trying to find their place. Another thing is that we're playing with brain patterning just as much as tissue patterning, right? So this is telling me when you do a lunge, this is where you're used to doing it.
Yeah,
right? Or maybe
I always
this
feel like
far
my
out.
legs are too long to be, it feels cramped up to be this close, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, everyone will find their particular positioning, right? If I have you do this 100 times, your body is definitely going to start to dorsiflex more, because all of a sudden this is going to feel weird and inefficient, right?
Yeah.
Now my weight is split between two legs, whereas here I can really pop off of this.
Yeah, it makes
Yeah.
a lot of sense.
And then another thing that I see also is that your brain is taking you to depth. And depth stuff is actually really good for you, but in particular when you're playing sports, or if you look at how a dancer will pop from one position to the next, they're rarely ever going to pop from here, right? They come up, and then right about here, which is jump position, is where they will take off and be plyometric. So you really want to figure out how to most efficiently move from one place to the next without losing energy, right? And if I go all the way down here, and I need to go here, then from here to about here is where I'm taking up energy that I don't need to.
Right.
Yeah?
Yep.
So next up, we're going to try that very same motion with a heavier load.
Okay. Alrighty.
This is where your body starts to find more efficiency, because it's not a light thing it's moving around. Remember to move nice and slow with it.
And this side goes forward.
Yep.
Just, okay.
And
And
we'll straddle the viper to start on a horse.
okay. Make sure I'm in the camera view here. Okay. So.
Yep.
Shorter stride.
Spin and reach. Lateral lunge. Spin and reach. And back on the horse. Switching sides. Lateral lunge.
Is that right?
Yeah, you want to step out a little bit further so you got some room in there. And reach again. Then back on the horse. Good, you can step out so you have some room. Nice job shortening that stride and on the horse. We'll get one more. You're okay. Yeah. Lateral lunge. On the reach. And back on the horse. Good. So looking at the video, if I was your coach, looking at your video, I would say, okay, in these particular positions, we saw some neuromuscular activity that wasn't exactly efficient, right? And in every video, you'll see something a little bit different. So where I would say we would need to work on to make this flow more flowy is number one, your balance position. So when you do come over, there's this, number one, the leg isn't as high as it needs to be to pass comfortably, so we're kind of leaning a little bit. And then another thing is, it feels like there's a rush into the next position. And that could be because, oh, this is new, I'm trying to figure out what's next. Or it could be that, my balance with this load, whatever the load is not holding me where I need to be, right? So one thing I could do is do positional training, which would be me just being in this position and balance and bring it back, hinge and balance, and that would make it better as well. Or I can change the position of the load, and we can practice being here, practice getting all those tissues that need to be strong and in length, and maybe coming out away from the midline, and then drop it down. Raise the leg. Well, you'll practice with this one. That one's pretty heavy.
Just one, so just up.
That one's going to be pretty heavy on your hip flexor.
And this way?
So first we're going to do a reach on the very same side. This is going to depend on the hip flexors being strong. It's also going to depend on the opposite hip balancing the weight. And this is just going to add to the amount of tissue innervation that you have, right? And then keeping that leg up, I'm going to shift to that very same side, place it back, and then down.
Yeah, it's kind of heavy, but
Yeah,
hold on. Okay.
try that.
So,
That's going to stay right on top. Opposite.
same arm.
Good. And let it touch and then drop the leg.
And the other leg. That's it?
Yeah. So what you're doing now is you've taken that tilting stimulus and you've now raised it to have a different center of gravity altogether. This is harder than the tilting itself.
Yeah.
And when you go back to the tilting, the balance would feel a lot better.
Okay.
Good. Feel how your body kind of wants to do one of those during the process?
Yes, it does.
Yep, really try to create a tall spine from the tailbone through the crown. Yep, and then the brain has to coordinate. Which way was I moving again?
Yeah. It's tricky.
And even though this mode of training is totally different from FRC, the thought process of FRC still comes into play for me. So anytime I do see that trying to happen, it just tells us of our compensatory actions. Right?
Yeah, well, and part of it is too, I was like, am I extending too much? Because that's my favorite pattern is to,
Go into hyperextension.
yeah.
One more for each. Nice job. So there's a bunch of different ways in which we could utilize footprint, handprint on the Viper, because the double handles aren't the only spaces to grab. Positioning as far as where are my feet going in the footprint pattern? Are they going into a dynamic lunge? Are they going into a split stance? How far off the midline the Viper is moving? So there's a lot of different ways in which we can manipulate the stimulus, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna play for about 5-10 minutes.
Okay.
If that's okay with you.
Yeah,
Yeah? And we're gonna play horse.
okay.
So you're gonna do what I do,
Oh, okay,
okay?
cool,
And we're just gonna start to create a flow. I'm gonna put the music up.
okay.
What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna choose one motion, and then you're gonna go into that motion. You'll pause, I'm gonna choose another motion, and then you'll go into that motion. So we'll go,
Follow the
move for
leader,
move.
but I'm gonna wait till you finish.
yes, exactly. And then when I feel like we've got it, we're both gonna go at the same time like we're dancing almost.
the motion. Okay,
Yeah?
Yep.
Okay.
cool.
Let's raise up these tunes. This is specifically my playlist for Viper stuff.
So these are Vipers.
Yeah.
Who named them that?
Well, my mentor, Michelle
Okay.
Dalcour. So Viper is an acronym for vitality, intensity, performance, and recovery. So it can be utilized for all of those things.
Cool. I got the light one, right?
Yes. So we'll go into our forward pattern first. Good. Let's do that one again. Nice short step. Good. Now I'll go around the opposite side. Good. Now I'm going to alternate. Good. I'll lift and shift. Drop step. Setting it down. I'm going to swing. So I'm going to place this behind me. And as I hinge up to a standing position, let the biker go. Trying not to move my hands from next to my chest. And now I'm going to stand it up in a totem pole. Good. Hold that position. I'll go into a deep squat. And swing it. Good. Set it down. I'll shift it. And I'll set it down and I'll alternate over reaches. Good. Rest. So you can see how heart rate picks up a little bit,
Yeah.
right? The room starts to heat up a little bit. But after you get into a little bit of flow and you tie these things in, you'll find that you're moving for like 5 minutes loaded and you didn't even notice time passes.
Yeah.
When I am training this, I do set timers because I tend to overdo it.
Really?
Because it is fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do now is teach you a movement flow.
Okay.
I'm going to step forward. I'm going to step out to the side. Same hand here. This time I'm opposites, yeah?
Okay.
So forward, out to the side, onto the inside. Forward, drop step, curl over, drop step. Now, here's where it's going to start to get tricky. Forward, drop step, drop step. See my single handle? Bringing it up to the top. One more time, let's stand it up straight.
Alright. Handles facing away. Okay.
Step. Drop step. Big circle around. Go. Drop step. Legs circles around. As I come up, I'm basically pushing with this leg and lifting. You see how my viper takes a lift pattern here?
Yes.
And then this hand is going to meet the cup.
Okay.
So if I'm holding this like so, this hand is just gonna pull it toward me. Ready?
Yeah.
Forward.
Okay, forward.
Drop step. Hip circle. Drop step. Lift. Put it back between the legs. Hip circle. Drop step. Forward. Drop step. Hip circle. Lift. Drop step. Drop step. Forward. One more time. Drop step. Hip circle. Up. Drop step. Drop step. Reach. Switch sides.
Can I go on the other side of you?
You absolutely can.
Easier for me to watch. Okay.
Straight reach. Drop step. Hip circle. Drop step.
Oh, you spin it all the way around. I think that's what I was missing.
Yep, so this is like a rainbow pattern. My hand never changes position.
I think I just had the grip wrong.
So your palm faces away from you in this position. This here is where I am in my drop step.
I think
And
I was,
all I do is pull and then push.
okay. I think I was doing a different reach.
Let's try again.
Yep.
Forward. Drop step. Hip circle. Better. Drop step. Hip circle. Drop step. Reach. Drop step. Hip circle. Two more. One more. Whoop, I skipped it. Good. Nice job. That's it.
Ah, that's fun. I like that. That's yeah, good
Brain.
brain. Yeah,
Yeah, brain and body.
yeah, I like that.
But there's a lot of different ways to manipulate the viper. So many different possibilities that you can stick into a flow. When it comes to farmer's carries, there's a bunch of different ways to flow in your farmer's carry. This is your simple one. If I want to practice getting that off the midline, you know, to form robust tissues in the rotary plane essentially, or transverse, I'm going to try to make this viper move around me. So if you see my palm is facing the viper on this side, my chest stays nice and proud. I'm going to push the viper forward as I step, and I'm going to allow it to come to the opposite side. So this is when it's behind. This is when it's in front. My palm is always receiving it. And simple farmer's flow. Abs stay tight. Spine stays tall. And that 4K is naturally light, but it's about the coordination right now.
I feel like I'm doing the wrong leg. So, wait, am I supposed to be here?
Left foot forward and the viper's on your left.
Okay.
Good. And remember, we're not through the cut. We're actually trying to push the viper forward and then push it back in the opposite direction. Good. Allow that viper to come all the way to your side. Push and receive it. Go ahead and push it accelerator. Receive it. Allow that force to rotate slightly as that bike comes to the side.
Like,
So when it's behind, you're nice and tall. When it's to the side, it rotates slightly.
you just added one more variable, now I don't remember anything.
Nice and tall here.
Okay.
When it comes to this side, allow the body to rotate toward that side. So go ahead, switch your position, receive it. Yep. And this left foot is supposed to be forward. Good. Now step. Tall. And rotate.
I see.
Reverse it. Good. Think of the right arm as
So
being
I'm doing this, but I'm not supposed to be doing this.
right. Trying to stay centered with the hips as best you can between your footprint. So any shifting or any translation of the hip should definitely be noted. And remember that if that Viper weighed 400 pounds, there's no way you'd be able to lift it. So try to get this elbow to relax. That's a lot of energy we're utilizing here. If I tried to bend my elbow with this bad boy, I'd be tired real quick, or my bicep would want to fall off.
Right.
Control and coordination.
Tough one for me.
Good. Set that 4K down. Try that farmer's walk with this.
Same thing.
Same motion.
Can I try the other arm?
You absolutely can. Yeah.
Okay. So now I have to rethink this. Okay.
Start behind.
So like this.
Viper goes behind you first. Good. As you step, you're going to step with the right foot. The Viper's going to go to your right side. Yep. And step. So as that left foot came forward, the Viper should be behind you. So it's a simultaneous motion.
So I'm going from here.
Yes. Turn that hand around. Palm is receiving like you're catching the ball. Yep. Push it away. And as you're stepping, so remember to step simultaneously. Good. 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 Reverse it. Nice. Find that palm print just at the ready for the Viper. You're okay. There you go. Good. One more round. Good. Try to feel the same weight distribution when you do start to move in reverse. Good. Try and keep the weight between the footprint rather than relying on the back foot. Good. Practice makes progress.
Yeah.
So when you're stepping forward,
These are cool.
good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. So when you're stepping forward, here's what I see. This is a nice even footprint or even weight distribution where if I took a camera and measured where your hips are in comparison to where your feet are, your hips are basically distributing the weight about 50-50.
Yeah.
When you're coming backwards, you're relying on the back foot,
Yeah.
and that'll be wasting a lot of energy in the sense that this quad now has to do all the work to move you back into place.
Okay.
Whereas if you took the same 50-50 pattern, right? Let's say I'm starting here. And actually I'm coming here. I want to reverse.
I'm so glad that happened to you too.
Yeah, well, it happens often. You know, especially once you get warmed up and the brain recognizes what pattern you're trying to complete. Here we go. That's it.
Yeah, I notice I have a really hard time. I feel like I have to kind of move my hips out of the way.
So hip translation is an indicator right there, right? If I put you into a split stance, a split position, I'm sorry I'm keeping you so long.
That's okay.
But if I put you into a split position and we measured your hip translation capability, it should be the same on both sides. We should be able to load that hip translation too. But if I told you be completely still and be centered, and this kept happening, it's an indicator that something deeper, right? Something deeper is going on, and this is where FRC becomes very, very useful, right? Because this might be, it might not be, oh, my hips just like to translate. It might be, my femur likes to internally rotate.
Yeah, well, this femur does like to internally rotate.
We know that, right? And we know that in this kind of linear position or in this adducted position, your femur wants to go into an external rotation pattern, right? Or rather, a space pattern, if you will.
Yeah.
Internal rotation.
Right.
So when you're here, right, this is going to be more difficult, right, than, or rather, this is going to be more difficult than this, right? You'll notice that on that single leg, maybe this wants to happen. And in that case, loading this structure in this particular position is going to be a good idea. Or maybe even loading in the opposing tissue position. Whereas I can take my 4K, I can line it up,
Oh.
right? And I try not to go to my comfort zone and stay adducted and then bring it down. And maybe today I don't want to do controlled articular rotations in the classic sense. Maybe I want to make it more of a flow where I think of changing patterns. Oh, something for me to work on. And then switching sides. Maybe I hold it with both hands so I get a little assistance. Trying not to go to my comfort zone.
Okay.
And switch sides.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I've been practicing a lot of airplanes, you know, like the full range of all the way open to all the way closed, and I mean they're getting a little better, but
Yeah, and
it's
you
still
can
not-
load airplanes with this thing as well, right? If I'm here and I go into my pattern, right? I always put myself near a wall because if I do fall off balance, I don't want it to be a major ordeal. So when I do kick back, I'm trying to keep this as a measurement tool as to whether I'm turning out or not. And I keep this right against me, turn out, and then turn back.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's one way.
Yeah.
And ultimately, like, maybe this is too heavy for an airplane, right? It could be with a ball, where I actually take this ball and attach it to the hip that's moving. Or rather, both hips are moving, but the hip that has the more flamboyant motion going on. So I'll take this, and I'll try to open it up. And now I've got a load going on.
Right.
Or maybe I want more off the midline action.
Whoa. Yeah, that looks like it would be hard.
Right? Or maybe I want more off the midline action, in which this is going to be a super long lever.
Yeah. Yeah, actually I was thinking just watching you do that, I was like, I wonder how that would be with like an ankle weight too.
Ankle weight is going to be a little more of a centered pattern. So you will be loading more so the hamstrings and glutes in a linear fashion, which is still not bad.
Right.
But if you want off the midline, always think
Yeah.
off my midline.
Right.
And you're going to be loading in a totally different pattern.
Yeah. I like that. That was really fun.
Cool.